The cocktail party problem exemplifies the challenges of auditory attention. Humans can attend to a target talker in presence of competing background talkers. However, listeners with hearing impairment and cochlear implants often struggle in this setting. In this talk, we propose to use computational model of hearing to understand the root cause of auditory attentional deficit following hearing impairment and cochlear implantation. And this work builds on top of a recent work from our lab that developed neural network models that can attend on par with normal hearing listeners. So, to start with, what are the factors limiting auditory attention following cochlear implantation? Attentional deficits could reflect degraded peripheral information, for instance, if attentional cues are not encoded with sufficient fidelity. Alternatively, deficits could also result from suboptimal decoding of the altered peripheral representation that arises from very artificial electrical stimulation of the auditory nerve fibers. However, you can imagine that relying only on human studies is not sufficient to answer this question. Therefore, as an alternative, we propose to use computational models of hearing to understand the role of peripheral and central factors in limiting attentional behavior. Similar to the previous work, here we use word recognition as an attentional selection task. We first play an example of the target talker or the cue, which provides information about the voice and location of the target talker. Then we play a mixture containing the target talker at the same location, but now saying a new word with other distracted talkers at other locations. And the task is to identify what was the middle word said by the cue talker in the mixture. So in this example, the correct answer would be tomorrow. And performing this task correctly requires selection based on voice and spatial location of the target. Similar to many previous works from our lab, we simulate the central auditory system using a feed-forward neural network. The model receives binaural cochlear representation as input. For the attentional task, the model first processes the cue. The attentional selection of the cued features are implemented as a learnable gain function derived from these features. The underlying idea here is that the attended features with high activation should give us high gains, and unattended features with low activation should give us low gains. In the next step, these feature-dependent gains are applied at each stage of the neural network model when the mixture is being processed. We implement these gain mechanisms at each stage of the neural network using parameterized sigmoid functions as shown here. And to again reiterate the idea, these gains should learn to pass features in the cue and attenuate other features. And all the parameters of the sigmoid functions along with the parameters of the neural networks are jointly optimized for the word recognition task, letting the model learn which features to extract and select. To simulate auditory attention with different peripheral conditions, we separately trained our models with three different input representations. First, a simulated normal cochlea that converts sound into normal auditory nerve representation. Second, to simulate a cochlea with degraded temporal coding, we lowered the upper limit of auditory nerve phase locking from 3 kHz to 50 Hz, as has previously been done by Sadler and McDermott in their 2024 paper. Third, we simulated a cochlear implant stimulated periphery that includes a simulated cochlear implant processor and electrode-to-nerve interface and converts sound into electrically stimulated auditory nerve response. And note that our models were fully optimized for these three different input representations separately. We first evaluate our word recognition performance in presence of a distractor talker. Human performance, as shown here, improves with increasing SNR, and the normal hearing model replicates a human-like behavior as has previously shown by Griffith and colleagues. We then looked at the model performances with degraded peripheral representation. Models with degraded temporal coding are shown in blue and with cochlear implant are shown in green. In both cases, the models can still perform the task. However, performance is overall much worse compared to the normal hearing condition. So far we discussed conditions where the distractor talker had the same sex as the target. However, it is well established that humans get significant benefit if the distractor talker has different sex. And the normal hearing model also shows similar benefit when the cue and the distractor talker have different sex. So we wanted to ask, what is the extent of benefit shown for models trained on degraded peripheral representation? Models with degraded temporal coding show some benefit in performance, but the benefit amount is smaller compared to the normal hearing condition. However, for models with cochlear implant input, there is no benefit observed, potentially because the voice cues are not encoded appropriately by the cochlear implant stimulated periphery. Additionally, since our models were trained on spatialized binaural audio, this allowed us to ask whether models with degraded peripheral representation can perform attentional selection in space. For normal hearing listeners, it is well established that spatial separation between the target and distractor often helps in recognition tasks compared to conditions where the target and distractor are co-located. And previous work has shown that similar behavior is exhibited by the normal hearing models. But it is not clear what limits spatial attention abilities of listeners with hearing impairment and cochlear implants. We attempted to answer this question using our modeling framework. So in this case, the model again performs the word recognition task. We place the target at 0 azimuth and place the distractor symmetrically around the target in azimuth at same elevation. We systematically vary the distractor locations to simulate different extents of spatial separation, and in each condition, evaluate the model word recognition performance. The normal hearing model can perform the task even when the target and distractor are co-located, but the performance is somewhat poor. By introducing only a small, about 10 degrees separation between the target and distractor, this model performance improves significantly. Adding large separation about 60 degrees boosts the performance even further. Whereas for models with degraded temporal coding, there is no significant change in performance for small separation. It requires a large separation to achieve notable performance improvements. Similar trends are exhibited by models with cochlear implant input. And these results indicate that models with degraded peripheral representation require large, at least 60 degrees spatial separation to show notable benefit in performance. So in this work, models were fully optimized for the peripheral input, representing a best-case central decoder. Therefore, our results do not support the hypothesis that attentional deficit could result from central limitation. Rather, our work underscores the possibility that attentional deficits could reflect degraded peripheral information. So just to summarize, here we developed models of auditory attention to perform target talker word recognition in presence of distractors. We optimized models for different types of peripheral nerve representation. Models can perform word recognition in presence of distractor. However, the benefit from distractor sex difference is modest and needs large separation between the target and distractor for achieving notable improvement in task performance. And our results support the hypothesis that attentional deficits reflect degraded peripheral information. With that, I would like to thank my advisor, Dr. Josh McDermott, and my collaborator, Ian Griffith, and I'd like to thank my lab for their entire support. And with that, thank you all for your attention, and I'm happy to take any question.